Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to this next part of the jazz series. I hope you're all doing well. Thanks for coming back to check out the lesson. For this week, what we're going to be taking a look at is basically adding a fourth note into our shape 2 voicings from an A string root. Obviously last week we have been taking a look at adding in a fourth note, which was kind of, the fifth or the seventh or an extension to shape 1 from an E string root. Now this week we're going to take a look at shape 2, and we're going to get a lot of really nice sounding voicings from this and some cool extensions and stuff. So yeah, these shape 2 voicings with some extensions yield some really pretty sounds. So yeah, really excited about this lesson, so let's get started. Alright guys, so let's start from a C root note. So we're going to have third on the A with the middle finger, second on the D with the pointer, and then fourth on the G with the pinky. And that's going to just give us our common like C major 7 shell voicing. Okay. So here's our just C major 7 shell voicing. Okay, so first thing we're going to look at adding in isn't even going to be extension. It's just going to be basically adding in the root note, but as the melody note, so the highest note we hear basically. So we're going to change the fingerings around a little bit. So ring is going to swap out with the middle, and then middle is going to swap out with the pointer. Now the pointer is going to go to the 5th fret of the B string, and we're going to get this kind of sound. Okay, which is really tense from that minor second there, but it's still a really pretty voicing. Let's take this up to F. Same exact voicing. Okay, so that's kind of the first, just adding that root note on top can make for some really pretty textures. Okay, now let's go back to the original way to finger this with middle, pointer, and then pinky. Now I'm going to add my ring to the 3rd fret of the B. Okay, and that's going to give us like a C major 9. Okay, up to F, E flat, D flat, down to C. Okay, so that's a really nice voicing. Again, a major 9 chord. Okay, very pretty sound. Alright, so from there, and again, this will work just fine as a 1 chord. So all these are kind of substitutes for a 1 chord. Like if you're going, a 2-5-1, you can substitute these in for the 1 chord and they'll all work. Okay, now let's just add the 3rd on top once again. Okay, so now let's finger this middle, pointer, ring, pinky on the 5th fret of our B. Now that's adding the 3rd on top. Adding the 3rd on top with an F. Okay, so that's a nice voicing there. Okay, now let's add the 5th on top. Okay, now again I'm going to finger the standard shell voicing, middle, pointer, pinky. I'm going to add the 5th on the 3rd fret of the high E. Okay, so a really pretty voicing. Okay, now I'm going to do a bar with my pointer finger and grab the 2nd fret of the high E, and this is going to give us like that flat 5 or sharp 4 sounds, like again a 4 is kind of the same thing as 11, so you could think of this as like a C major 7 sharp 11. Okay, so that sharp 11 is on top. Again, this would still work as a 1 chord. Okay, so a really pretty voicing there. It's a really kind of dark texture, but it's very pretty with that sharp 11 being on top like that. Okay, back to kind of the original shape. So now again, middle, pointer, ring. Okay, adding the 13 or the 6 on top. Now I'm going to add that with my pinky finger on the 5th fret of the high E. And I'm picking the 3 bottom notes with pick, middle, ring, and then I'm grabbing the highest note with my pinky. Okay, up to F. Okay, down to D flat. Okay, and then down to C. Okay, so there's some, kind of some common ways to add a fourth note into that C major shape too from an A string root, and again those will all work to substitute in for a 1 chord. So once we get back to the 1 chord, whether we're doing a 2-5-1 to F major or C major, D major, it doesn't matter, these will all kind of work as a substitute for 1 chord. And obviously once again use your ears, figure out what you like the sound of when it works, when it maybe doesn't work. It might not always work to have that sharp 11 up there, especially depending on what the melody note is of the song that you're playing. But yeah, so those are some really fun voicings. Those all sound really good. Especially like the C major 9 sounds great. And with all these voicings as well, you know how we had looked at playing like a C major 6 chord. So where that 7 is, just dropping it down 2 frets. Okay, try all the voicings from there now. Okay, so let's try C major 9. Okay, so dropping that 7th down to the 6th. There's adding the 3rd, adding the 5th, adding the sharp 11, and then adding the 13. So those obviously all sound really good, very pretty voicings. Okay, so there's just a couple options for you guys to experiment around with and get some great sound. So let's move on now to a minor 7 voicing and look at adding a 4th note into that. Alright, our minor 7 voicing. So let's play this from D minor 7. So 5th fret of the A, 3rd fret of the D, and then 5th fret of the G, and that's ring, pointer, pinky. Okay, D minor 7 shell voicing. I'm just going to do a bar with my pointer finger and grab the root 3rd fret of the B. So that's just adding the root note in once again, no extension. But it does make for a pretty texture. Okay, now I'm going to refinger just a little bit. So I'm going to put my middle where my ring is, my ring where my pinky is. Okay, now my pinky is going to go to the 5th fret of the B. So that gives us a minor 9 chord. Okay, that's a really pretty sound, those minor 9 chords. And again, these will all work for like the minor 2 chord. When we're going 2-5-1, you can substitute these all in for the 2 chord. Okay, so that's a minor 9 chord, very usable, extremely common voicing. You'll see you guys playing this quite a bit actually. Okay, let's move the pinky up 1 more fret. So now it's going to be at number 6. It's going to be just a standard D minor with a 3rd on top now. So now we have some melody note options. So we can go get some different melody notes going on. Okay, so very pretty chord. And again, these are still all movable, so we can move these wherever we need them to be. Okay, now let's do a full bar with the pointer finger across 4 strings. Now I'm just going to grab the shell voicing with pick, middle, ring. Then I'm going to grab the highest note with the pinky. And the highest note is going to be 3rd fret on the high E string. It's going to give us like a minor 11 chord, D minor 11 in this case. Let's move it up to G minor 11. Okay, so really pretty voicing. Let's keep that exact same shape, but let's just add our pinky to the 5th fret of the high E now. Now we're just adding the 5th in. Okay, so going over them again. Root, minor 9, adding the 3rd in, minor 11, adding the 5th in. And you could hear that was kind of even a pretty texture just to walk the melody notes up like that. So up to G, doing the same exact thing. So from G, okay, so those are just some common add-ons for that shape too with the minor 7 that I think sound really, really good. And again, you'll want to experiment with all these, kind of taking them through some progressions and stuff. And we'll look at some common ways to play these with just playing a couple standard 2-5-1s, kind of adding these in at the end of this lesson to make sure that you guys have some examples to play around with and get comfortable with these. So yeah, that's a couple minor 7 voicings that I like to add on that are really nice, I think sound great. So now let's move on to dominant 7 and we can kind of start putting some 2-5-1s together. Alrighty guys, so now we're going to move on up to dominant 7 and we'll start this from a G dominant 7. So 10 on the A, 9 on the D, and then 10 on the G. Okay, and that's going to be middle, pointer, and then ring. Okay, so here's our shape we're going to have right here. Okay, so here's our original shell voicing. Now let's kind of basically totally change the shape around. So we're going to put ring where our middle is. Okay, put middle where the pointer is, and now pinky is going to go on 10th fret of the G. That's how we're going to refinger still just a shell voicing, dominant 7. But now I'm going to add the root note on the B on the 8th fret with the pointer finger. Okay, now again, remember that dominant 7, we add a lot of tensions in, because the tensions sound really nice, because normally on a dominant 7 chord, it's the 5 chord, that chord is normally going to take us back to 1. So, you know, why not add some more of these tension notes in to really create that strong pull back to 1? That's kind of the way I think about tensions anyways, you know, explaining them is, you know, when we add like a flat 9 or a sharp 9, something that's not even necessarily in the key, it's just giving us a stronger pull back to the 1 chord, and again it creates that tension, which, you know, all good music has that feel of tension and then release. So from the root, move the pointer up just 1 fret, and it's now going to be on the 9th fret of the B. It's going to give us a G dominant 7 flat 9. Okay, and that might sound kind of weird at first, but from last week, let's play a C major 13. We're going to resolve this too. See how great that resolved? This note pulled us really strongly into home bass. Okay, and actually, how I'm going to finger this G7 flat 9 is I'm actually going to swap out my middle and my pointer. Makes it a little bit easier to grab. This is a very common voicing too, you'll see this a lot, so really make sure to get this on your fingers. Okay, now we're going to go to just a standard G9. This is one that a lot of the funk guys would hang on for a long time back in the day, so this is just a, you know, a really popular funk voicing, but also works great in jazz. So what we're going to do is put the middle where the ring is, put the ring where the pinky is, and now pinky is going 10th fret of the B string. Okay, that's a 9 chord, a G9, and again that'll work anywhere. It's kind of a, you know, one of the really common funk voicings that guys like to hang on for a long time. I'm just like on a 1 chord vamp and stuff, but again also works great for jazz. Okay, now we get to the Hendrix chord. Okay, a sharp 9, a 7 sharp 9. We're just going to move our pinky up 1 fret. Okay, so that's kind of our Hendrix chord there. Sharp 9 chord, a 7 sharp 9. Okay, we can move the pinky up even 1 more and get the 3rd as the highest note we hear now. Okay, so some really nice voicings there, and you might notice we just walked all those notes up basically chromatically, so we just went. Okay, Okay, so there's all our notes there. Right, so let's start out by adding now, just going back to a standard shell voicing here. Okay, now let's add the 5th as the highest note we hear. Okay, so that's going to be 10th fret of the high E. Okay, so that's just standard 5. Now let's refinger, keeping the common shell voicing. Okay, I'm now going to have ring, middle, pinky. Okay, so ring on the A, middle on the D, pinky on the G. Pointer on the 9th fret of the high E. That's going to give us a flat 5 voicing. 7 flat 5. Okay, let's take it back to a regular 5th. Now move the pinky up 1, and we get a sharp 5 voicing. Now move the pinky up 1 more, and it's going to be all the way on 12. We're going to get like a 7-13 voicing, so a 13 voicing basically with the added 13th on there. Okay, now down to C. Might be a little bit of a stretch for you guys, just give this one some time. Okay, so right there I'm going 9, adding the 5th in, 13, 5, 9, and then down to the root. Okay, so there is basically our 13 chord. You know, adding in just some extensions, some altered notes, you know, the 3rd, the 5th, the root again. So again, just giving you guys options to experiment around with. There's a lot of great sounds in there, a lot of stuff that sounds really, really good, and you can, you know, take these through a whole bunch of progressions and just get the sound down. So yeah, experiment with these shape 2s quite a bit. You know, really get comfortable with these. Get a lot of work put into them. Even just moving those melody notes around and stuff. Just hanging on one chord for a while and seeing what kind of sounds you can end up with. So now let's move on to combining shape 1 and shape 2 together with some of these extensions and see what kind of sounds that we end up with. Alright, so now we get to kind of the fun part of actually making some music with all of these shapes. So let's just stay in C again, just to keep it simple. And you know, for sure you guys are going to want to take these through all 12 keys and you know, comp through some tunes in a real book, or you know, maybe on YouTube, some jazz standards and stuff, so you know, just get comfortable with these in a whole bunch of keys. So let's start with just a D minor 7 shell voicing, shape 1, E string root. I'm going to add the 11 into this with the pointer. Okay, 8th fret of the B. It's kind of our minor 11 voicing that we had taken a look at last week. Okay. Now I'm going to go to that G7 flat 9 that we had taken a look at. And then I'm going to finish off with a C major 13. Okay, so you can hear how nice that sounds because the melody note is doing this. Okay, so that really sounds just beautiful, you know, obviously because it's creating such a strong pull. Now let's kind of do basically the opposite with those melody notes. So instead of doing this, we're going to do this. We're going to descend. So I'm going to do just that D minor 7 with the 5th as the melody note. Okay, a G7 flat 9 once again. C major 7, but with the 5th as a melody note, so that 5th on the B string at the 8th fret. Okay, so here we go one more time. Okay, so you can hear once again how all the notes kind of pull to that home bass. I'm going to kind of bring us back there. Let's try it one more thing. Let's do a standard D minor 7 with the 5th on top. That G dominant 7 with the root on top now. And resolve it to a C major 7 sharp 11. Okay, kind of a cool dark sound. Okay, so really an interesting texture there for sure. Okay, so we had started this with shape 1, shape 2, then shape 1. Now let's go to shape 1, shape 2, and then shape 1 to kind of get a little more, to get a few more options with these chords and get a little more comfortable with them. Okay, so starting from shape 2, let's start the standard shell voicing, D minor 7, shape 2 once again. Let's make this a minor 9 chord. That 9 on top of the pinky. Okay, let's go to a G7 shell voicing, but we're going to put the 13 on top, or the 6, okay? Okay, now we're going to end off with the C major 7, but we're going to have the 3rd on top. Okay, now there's a really fun exercise I like to do with jazz voicings is to try to get a common tone, we call that, on top, where it's a tone that stays common throughout the chord change. So it's a chord that, or it's a tone that's actually not changing. So you can see here. Okay, so that's obviously staying constant through the whole progression. Okay, now we're going to try a chromatic movement in the melody again. So we're going to go from E flat or D sharp, down to D. Okay, and how we're going to get that in there is starting with the D minor 9 again. Okay, start with our G7 shell voicing, but we're going to add a sharp 5 into there. So it's going to be 4th fret of the B. Okay, so again, you guys might, especially if you haven't played much jazz, this might sound kind of like a weird voicing at first, but listen to how we resolve this now. And resolve to a C major 9 chord, okay? Okay, so taking that through one more time. Okay, so really a lovely texture there. Okay, now let's do something else. We're going to add the melody note onto the high E string. So we're going to start with the D minor 11, actually doing that bar with the pointer finger. Okay, now I'm going to go to a G7, flat 9, adding my pinky, that flat 9 shape we looked at last week, adding my pinky 4th fret of the high E. Okay, now a C major 7 with a 13 on top, or just a C major 13. And once again, we get this. Okay, so you can hear how beautiful that sounds, really, really strong pull. Let's do almost the same thing, starting with the same chord, but this time, instead of a flat 9, we're just going to do a G7 regular 9, so just a G9. And we get a common tone in there. Again, these are just giving you kind of options, just showing you some examples. All this stuff just takes time to work out and get comfortable with it, and see how these tones are moving. Just pay attention to how they're moving, how you can smooth things out. I never really had anyone kind of walk me through, how all these tones are always supposed to move. I just kind of use my ear and my eye, my eyes also, to kind of pay attention to, like, where are these tones going to be moving on the fretboard? Does this tone want to go up or down? Where does everything want to move to, and how's it, how does a sound pull to the next tone? So just kind of pay attention to that. Give yourself some time to get comfortable with these voicings and to really get them worked into your playing, because I guarantee you it'll really add some fresh sounds into what you're doing. So yeah, these are some great voicings. There's obviously a lot more you can experiment with. You can also add these into, we had taken a look at like shape 1 and shape 2. Like shape 1 starting from an A string root, shape 2 starting from a D string root. Just for time's sake, we're not going to go over those today. Again, you guys, now that you kind of know the theory behind this and where you add them in, you guys can take a look at adding those in with those voicings as well and getting comfortable with them. But now what we're going to take a look at next week is actually dropping the root note out of some of these voicings that we have already taken a look at. So basically with these 4-note voicings, okay, we're going to take a look at just dropping the root note out altogether, basically, so we can stay out of the bass player's way. So there won't be like, most of the time there won't be a low root note in these, so they'll work really, really well when you're playing with a bass player, not just doing solo stuff. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this lesson, had a good time. Again, all these extensions and adding a fourth note really adds some beautiful sounds and some textures, so make sure to spend a lot of time on this and get comfortable with all these new voicings and sounds. And yeah, I will plan on seeing you guys back here next week for the next lesson. Thanks so much, everyone.